This is Ringler Radio, where you get all the latest news and information about structured settlements from Ringler Associates, the first name in structured settlements, helping injured people and their families since 1975. Ringler Radio is made possible in part by Allstate, American General, John Hancock, Liberty Mutual, MetLife, Mutual of Omaha, New York Life, Pacific Life, and Prudential. Now join Ringler Radio host Larry Cohen.
Well, hello and welcome to Ringler Radio, everyone. I'm Larry Cohen, the head of Ringler Associates Northeast Operations, and we're certainly glad again you could join us. Today on Ringler Radio, we're going to discuss some of the challenges that can arise in the structured settlement process, and more importantly, how they are solved. And joining me in this discussion today is my colleague, Angus Kennedy, from our Ringler San Marcos, California office. Angus specializes in liability, products, medical malpractice, and complex workers' compensation. So with that, Angus, welcome to Ringler Radio. Great to have you with me.
Thank you, Larry. It's always a pleasure to participate on a Ringler Radio show.
Super. Well, you know, the majority of cases settle out of court, many of them in mediation. And that's where it's important to have a structured settlement consultant to enter the process at the beginning. And if that happens, some pitfalls can be avoided. Let's talk about that first, Angus. What types of issues can weigh in early in the process? Why is it important for a structured broker to be there at the beginning rather than at the end?
Well, interesting. I've heard some percentages that, I know, at least here in California, 98% of cases that are tried are criminal cases, which means there's only 2% are civil, which means 98% of the civil cases are going to be settled, whether it's in negotiations and a mediation process, et cetera. And in my last 15 years of doing structured settlements, probably the most important piece I'd say is education. Education on the benefits of a structured settlement to all parties, specifically the injured party. And not only the injured party, but, the plaintiff attorneys, the defense attorneys, the claim professionals, and sometimes the mediator as well. They need to understand the true benefit, the IRS codes, the revenue rulings, the public law, specifically to the tax-free benefit, but also to the variety of payment streams that can be utilized.
Well, Angus, that's so true. And there are also so many clients who fear the unknown and aren't well-versed in the benefits of structures. So how do you try to remedy that when people just aren't familiar enough with it? They're more cynical, they're more skeptical about the process.
Well, in this day of technology, I find utilizing our Ringler Associates website is really helpful in allowing not only me explaining it to them, but during the mediation and or after mediation to go onto our website and see that they're not the only person settling a case, that there's been 170,000 people prior to them who've invested in this process, and then they're hearing it from another storyline.
No question about that.
Also, other fears, especially in the work comp world, are loss of benefits. The fear of losing your Social Security benefit, your Medicaid benefit, a long-term disability benefit, and as not to mention paying their medical bills or just month-to-month bills that they have to pay. If you can find out what the need of the individual is and try to match those payment streams with the needs of the individual, that resolves a lot of issues.
Well, also the lure of going with an all-cash payment over the structure sometimes is the number one challenge in some of these cases. There are a lot of people out there that say, just give me the cash, although they don't really understand some of the drawbacks to taking all that cash over the structured settlement. How do you deal with that issue when someone says, you can give me the cash, I'll do better, or give me the cash, I don't want the structure?
Well, there's plenty of information out there, on the percentages of people, whether it's a structured settlement, a lottery, an inheritance, who diminish the funds within, 1, 3, 5 years because they don't have the expertise or the guidance, to handle their money, and it ends up being mismanaged. So I just try to, continue down the education process so that there's a comfort level in knowing that we're not trying to take advantage of them. We're trying to help them throughout the settlement process. Not to mention, it's hard for an individual to make one decision in their life about their entire financial future. You get them pondering that
Right. And, it's interesting. Even sometimes when they have advisors that are trying to help them, a lot of those advisors aren't really familiar with the product. So it becomes like a double education where you have to educate the advisor as well. And oftentimes I find that if you can at least get in the door with the advisor to be able to educate them, sometimes that advisor will see the light. They'll see the value of the tax-free structure and the protective benefit of the structure. And also be able to utilize some of those periodic payments to help reinvest for the client. So there's a lot of ways to be a win-win. But Angus, there are a lot of commercials out there on TV, especially late at night, seen by millions of folks that promote cashing in the structure, factoring the payments. Have you had clients ask you about this, and what should they know about factoring or cashing in those settlements?
Yes, I've had injured parties ask me during negotiations. I've had injured parties call me several years after they settle their case with a structured settlement asking about the factoring companies. And so what I try to do is I try to get them to a source that can advise them clearly on the pitfalls. Also, just the simple things such as, they're only going to receive a small percentage of their payout, the potential issues with assignment, the difficulty with getting it approved by the courts, specifically work comp. They don't even allow it in California because they are truly trying to protect the benefit or protect the injured party, from themselves or other parties.
And what about the whole issue of just people's general hesitation to deal with the financial markets at all? I mean, oftentimes you get this put my cash into the mattress syndrome, when the recessions hit and some of the pullbacks occur and the markets go up and down. There are some folks who are just a little skittish. How do you reassure them about what a structure is versus some of those other more volatile financial elements?
Well, it does come back to the education piece. The structured settlement industry has been in play for 40 years. There's never been a failure of a structured settlement to be made. We have the highest rated life companies who are required by, the state and the federal government to put those funds aside to make sure those payments are made, and versus, speculation of market return. As you lay that out to individuals who usually can't afford to play the market or don't have the capacity or the expertise to deal with that on a day-to-day basis, usually there's a meeting of the minds.
Well, I agree with you. And, oftentimes you find that this concept of peace of mind becomes one of the key elements. The fact that the structured settlement doesn't change. The payment stream is identified early, and you know exactly when the check is coming and how much the check is going to be, rather than the speculation of up and down markets. It allows you to put your head on your pillow at night and kind of sleep easy. So I think some of those elements of the structured settlement become a real benefit for those who are looking for some security as they move forward. Now, in your case, Angus, you've done a lot of these structured settlements. What would be, let's say, the biggest challenge you faced during the process, and how did you resolve it? Give us an example.
Well, I mean, usually you're dealing with greed, some ignorance, lack of knowledge, and a lot of times the greed isn't necessarily the injured party. It's those around them, family members or friends who want to get a part of the settlement because that's been a discussion that's taken place.
Well, everybody's got great ideas for the money. When a claimant is contemplating a settlement, all of a sudden you've got people coming out of the woodwork. You've got family members, advisors. That's an important factor here. And how do those challenges around those kinds of issues, how do you deal with those? Give us an example of that.
Well, I mean, number one, as you just have discussions with the injured party and trying to figure out what their actual needs are, and you can put that in place, whether it's rent, food, utilities, you have to take a piece of their so-called portfolio and make sure it's clear that those monies are there to take care of their needs. Beyond that, if there are any interest in investments, they can take any of that money that they receive tax-free and maybe look into those type of options for additional income or maybe a business venture. But it doesn't affect the core needs of the individuals.
No, I agree with you. And, in terms of some of those interlopers trying to get their hands on things, oftentimes the defendants ask for confidentiality provisions in these settlements because they want to protect the the privacy of the settlement itself and not get it out into the public domain. Oftentimes, I think it's as important for the claimants to have the confidentiality, so they have something to fall back on when people say, "What did you do? How did you make? What did you earn? What was the settlement?" They can say, "I can't talk about it," and it somewhat insulates them from some of those fingers that you talked about getting in the pie.
No, absolutely.
All right, let's take a quick break right now, and when we come back, we'll talk about some of the interesting challenges encountered during the structured settlement process and how they've been solved. Structured settlements is a phenomenal product, but not everybody always agrees that it's right for them, and that's one of the things that, Angus, you and I have to overcome every day we're out there. So we'll be right back with more with Angus Kennedy and myself. We'll be right back.
This is Ringler Radio from Ringler Associates, the leader in the structured settlements profession nationwide. Did you know that Ringler is involved in a third of all structured settlement cases in the country? Ringler Associates works with all the parties in a lawsuit settlement to find the best possible financial solution for the people involved. There's a Ringler Associate in all the major cities of the U.S. No one has more experience than a Ringler Associate. Check out our new website at www.ringlerassociates.com for the best information for claimants, legal professionals, and claims personnel, and to find the Ringler Associate nearest you. When it's your interest at stake in a lawsuit settlement, you want only the best financial plan. You can count on Ringler Associates to structure a customized plan that meets the needs of you and your family for the future. Visit ringlerassociates.com to learn more.
Well, welcome back to Ringler Radio. Glad you could join us. I'm your host, Larry Cohen, and I'm joined by my colleague, Angus Kennedy, from the San Marcos, California office of Ringler Associates. We're talking about solving the challenges that may occur in the structured settlement process. We've all had situations where challenging situations have arisen, and we've had to solve them, sometimes on the spot. My biggest challenge always is the recalcitrant accountant or brother-in-law financial advisor who comes in and wants to put a stop to the structure idea, saying he's got better ideas and it's not a good idea, it's not a great investment. I think you said it earlier, Angus. These are not really investments. These settlement funds for injured people are not really investment dollars for them to invest. They're really dollars for them to live on, living expenses day to day, month to month, and the recognition that a tax-free, steady, safe, secure monthly income is the best way to go, or at least a part of it is the best way to go. Needs to get explained, and so trying to deal with accountants and sending them the various tax laws that provide the tax-free status, just explaining it to financial people who don't have the expertise in the product line is always a challenge. And yet we've got a lot of information now that we can produce and provide for them, which helps that. And in fact, I've sometimes called on certain tax attorneys that we know that can even write tax opinions if necessary to allay some of their concerns. So it's education, as you said, Angus. It's constantly educating, but sometimes you get some of the experts who have egos as well, and it's a little more difficult in that regard. So what about the tax implications with structured settlements? We know, of course, annuity payments are tax-free. But if the plaintiff dies during the payment period and the IRS wants to put a value on the remaining periodic payments, in other words, capture that amount in the decedent's estate, is there a way to provide an option for that so that the family isn't burdened by that estate tax?
Yeah, so beyond the obvious, in which we can put guarantees on those monthly incomes up to 40 years or deferred lump sum payments and have beneficiaries, primary, secondary, tertiary beneficiaries to protect family members. There are life companies that also allow for commutation clauses within the structured settlement that would allow a portion of that premium to be retroactively paid back to the family without any major tax implications.
Right, because as we all know, all of these structured settlements are income tax free, both state and federal income tax free, and they pass income tax free to beneficiaries. But there are certain estate tax issues that may arise, and as you know, Angus, sometimes we'll provide the opportunity for an individual to have life insurance that might pay the estate tax if there is one, or these commutation riders that allow more of a lump sum approach to be able to pay any projected estate taxes. So there are mechanisms in place to help that along, and it's been a smooth sailing process for folks that have been involved in the structured settlement product. Now, what about the plaintiff? And I think we touched on this a little earlier, but what about the plaintiff who says he has a friend who's a stockbroker who can invest the settlement? I got a brother-in-law, a stockbroker guy. How do you deal with that challenge? What do you do when you hear that?
Yeah, well, the first thing I do is I welcome that individual into the conversation. I don't try to put up walls. I welcome them in, let them explain what their strategy is, and any money management person worth their salt is going to allow that 40 to 60% of a portfolio should be guaranteed income. And there's really no better benefit than a structured settlement to really replace that area of the guaranteed income. And when I do that, we actually usually develop a relationship. We sometimes do cases in the future together, but they see the light after they're educated, and they usually incorporate the structured settlement into their client's financial future portfolio.
That's exactly right. Also, there's a whole area of workers' compensation that's somewhat different than the liability side of the house that a lot of us work in. Angus, you're kind of a subject matter expert on workers' comp. You'd handle a lot of it. What special instances come up that are answered by someone with your experience to avoid the pitfalls or unintended consequences that may occur? Help our audience understand some of those workers' compensation special issues. Yeah,
we touched base a little bit on this, on the fears of the unknown, but some of the obvious issues that pertain when dealing with work comp is we have to deal with Medicare, number one. We got to make sure that we have the Medicare set aside put into place, which is in an annuity form, so that there's some financial guidance that take care of those medical bills before they use their Medicare card, so they don't lose that Medicare benefit. Also, Social Security benefit. I won't go into it too deeply, but there's an 80% shared cost rule in which Social Security will take an offset for anything above and beyond 80% of the applicant's or injured party's highest wage in the previous 5 years. So things to be aware of that most attorneys aren't aware of. When we put together a work comp settlement, we make sure we maximize each benefit. We maximize the structure with Social Security, with Medicare, and any other benefits that may be in play, so the injured party gets the benefit of the entire package.
And that's so right that when a Medicare set-aside account is required in order to protect and preserve these Medicare benefits going forward, some individuals don't realize that if you structure that Medicare set-aside, you actually can do that at a reduced cost, so there's more money in the pocket of the claimant, and that's a big help. And I know that's the kind of thing you explain constantly when you're involved in these workers' comp mediations.
Definitely.
Angus, it's easy for us to say that we feel strongly that a structured settlement is the best way to go for the injured individual and their family long term, especially when it comes to minors. But let's talk about that. I mean, it's not just these aren't just words of puffery on our part. I mean, for minors especially, tax-free structured settlements are almost an imperative, don't you believe?
Yes. Well, here in California, if there's any significant settlement, the courts won't even approve it without a structured settlement being involved. And we try to set up, multiple payments between 18 and 25 for a little social engineering. So, if they don't make a good decision with the first lump sum, maybe they will in the, second or third lump sum. But once parents see that as well, that this money can be utilized for their education or the down payment on the first house, it's a pretty easy sell. And all parties benefit.
You know, one of the things that we stress at Ringler is when we educate the claim community and the legal community is that over 50% of our cases are small cases. They're under $100,000 in value and premium, and a lot of these minors cases, when you have, for example, dog bite cases or other small cases with children, you can maximize those small dollars by deferring that money out to age 18 or college funds. So there are a lot of ways you can take small amounts of money and still provide some substantial benefit tax-free with a structured settlement. I had a young person about 22, 23 years old who decided that the amount of money he was getting in the settlement wasn't that huge, and he thought he would probably spend it if he got it as cash, so we actually put it into the future in lump sum payments out there, and it really is going to provide him with a nice series of tax-free checks at age 40 and 45 and 50. And I always say that was one of the smartest claimants I ever met. Even though he was young, he had the insight to realize that instead of spending the money now and regretting it, he's setting it out for the future, and he can now spend more of his current income on his current needs, knowing he's got something out there for him in the future. Well, how about a real-life story about an individual that you dealt with who was hesitant at first, but then ultimately benefited from, his acceptance or her acceptance of a structure?
I have a great story, and it continually reoccurs because I am in touch with the father of this injured party. At the time, it was a 25-year-old male who was out of the country and celebrating, a holiday, dove into a pool, became a paraplegic. I was brought in by the defense to assist in resolving the case. They had their financial planners involved, and they were thinking about taking the money because the father had done fairly well for himself, investing it and trying to piece this young man's life together. They chose at the time of settlement to take 80% of the net funds to the injured party. We put together monthly income, annual income for medical, lump sums periodically over the next 25 years. And as I stated, I periodically run into the father, and the young man is doing exceptionally. He's gone back to school. He started up his own T-shirt company, and he's kind of moved on, with his disability and making the absolute most of it. And as you know, that's why we're in the business. When you can take a tragedy and turn it into a positive, it makes what we do every day very, very worthwhile.
Well, Angus, our clients and the relationships that we have with our clients, really at the end of the day is the most important part of the job. These relationships we have with these clients and really the claimants that we've, really enabled going forward with structured settlements are also very important to us. I always tell people I get Christmas cards still from people that we've done structures for years and years ago, and the people that have spent the cash, they're long gone. So talk about feedback from clients that you've had along the way and how important it is that these client relationships be maintained.
The term win-win can be overused, but what we do on a daily basis, I think truly is a win-win. Our clients, if it's an insurance carrier, we allow them to take down a reserve and shut down an unknown risk, which is good for their business. At the same time, we get to affect the injured party and kind of piecing their lives back together and giving them that financial security of their future. As you mentioned, I've gotten Christmas cards from the injured parties who, at the time of meetings, had a disdain for me at the start because I was just another suit on the defense side. And upon resolving the case, they saw the benefit. We befriended each other, and those are the notes that I enjoy the most.
No question about it. I mean, it's fascinating to have somebody say, as they have, I just want you to know my daughter is going to college on the college fund that we set up for her when she was a very young, 16, 17 years ago, and it's terrific. So with that, Angus, I want to say thank you very much. As we wrap up today, Angus, you're out there on the West Coast. I'm on the East Coast. And there's a whole big country in between. And we have Ringler Associates all over the country. If anyone wants to reach any of these Ringler Associates, they can go to ringlerassociates.com Our website is it's been redesigned. It's really terrific. I encourage you to do that, and you can find all the Ringler Associates and out there. And if someone wanted to reach you other than that, Angus, how could they do that?
Well, if you can't catch me down at Carlsbad Beach catching some great waves on occasion, you can always get a hold of me at my toll-free number, which is 866-485-0015, or my email address, which is akennedy@ringlerassociates.com.
Terrific. And, of course, you can, as I said, you can reach all the Ringler Associates on our website. And, of course, Ringler Radio, you want to listen to these shows. They're very informative shows. We have hundreds of the shows, and you can reach them all by accessing ringlerradio.com, ringlerassociates.com, or legaltalknetwork.com, or you can go to iTunes and download them directly from iTunes onto your iPod or other device, where you can maybe put those earbuds in and go on that surfboard with you there, Angus, and catch some waves and listen to some structured settlement information. How's that sound?
Can't think of a better way to get continuing education credit.
Yeah, and do some dumps into the water, that's for sure. All right, well, with that, I want to thank everyone out there for listening. Thank you, Angus, for joining me today. Thanks for your expertise.
My pleasure.
And for all the rest of you out there, go have a great day. Bye-bye.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. Thanks for listening to Ringler Radio. With over 1 million listeners, Ringler Associates, the first name in structured settlements. Visit ringlerassociates.com today.